My name is Gijs Garcia Bogaerts. I'm a senior strategist at Evident Online. We do online things. We try to answer the questions that come to us with an answer that does a little bit more than expected in the online domain. And today we decided to also come up with a venture to invite as many interesting guests that we could get on board and take you out for half an hour. An urban escape, as we call it. We're now entering nature. We left Picnic City and we're in a very specific kind of nature, and I will tell you a little bit more about it in a few seconds, but I first would like to introduce the guests we have on board. Maybe it's nice if you give a very short introduction of who you are and what your field of interest is and where you work for. So maybe let's start with Bonnie. Welcome on board, Bonnie.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay? So my name's Bonnie Shaw. I am the Director of Social Innovation for a company based in Washington, D.C. called iStrategy Labs. We're a digital marketing agency that works with very large brands, civic institutions to create massively collaborative experiences. My background and training is actually as a landscape architect and urban designer, and I moved into technology through the creation of a simultaneous worldwide photographic treasure hunt that brought people together in cities all over the world to explore and tell stories. Thank you, Bonnie.
Hi, howdy. I'm Adam Greenfield, and I'm on a boat. I have the privilege and the honor of being founder and managing director of New York City-based urban systems design practice called Urban Scale, coming off of 2 very depressing years as head of design direction for service and user interface at Nokia. Let me tell you something, there's nothing that sets you up for having your own shop like working for a big company like Nokia and having your guts kicked out every single day of the year. My background is in military tactical psychological operations, and I come to technology through having tried to get by in the Bay Area in 1998 on a sergeant's pay and finding out that it really didn't go very far.
Awesome. So I'm Jake Barton, founder and principal of Local Projects, a New York City-based practice as well. We're nice neighbors. Local Projects is a media design firm, so we execute ideas in mobile platforms, iPads, iPhones. We make websites. We also make large multi-projector installations, mostly for museums and for public spaces. And so we're starting to move into civic space with a platform called Change by Us, which is an innovation platform for cities that encourages participation from citizens. But we also have other projects like the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, as well as sort of mass storytelling projects like StoryCorps in America that essentially encourage mass participation to constructive ends.
Thank you, Jake. Welcome on board. I'll use just about 5 minutes to tell you where we are, because I said we're entering nature, and I would like to clarify that a little bit. We're now floating in water that's directly connected to the ports of Shanghai, Singapore, Seattle, and other world ports by these guys, these big ships that bring the stuff we need and lose the water they need to keep floating. So in this salty water that's mixed here with the water that was already there, there's space for new life. Just like to dive into that for 2 seconds. This Chinese crab lives just on the shores of this part where we're right here, and the great tasting immigrants from America also choose to come to our city. So that's very, very interesting. There's a very interesting ecological system just here, because the ships bring stuff from one side of the earth to the other. And we're talking about cities all the time, and bringing stuff and bringing water and taking water, bringing algae. We talked about all kinds of things today with the various speakers on board. And right now, there's also very special kinds of creatures floating here. There's a plague of these jellyfish in this water right now. There's millions of them. And that's no problem. It's called a plague because there's many, but it's not a problem because they get eaten by the fish that decided to come along. So, we're in an ecosystem here. The floating city of Amsterdam, as you know, this city is floating on water. So we chose also the place to discuss with you about the city and about citizenship. and just take you out of Picnic City for a while. A little bit about what we do and nature, because there's a connection. One of the companies we work for asked us to share nature with citizens, bring it into people's homes, and we created an experience, and we created an underground foxhole, and we installed webcams in it and make a real life soap out of it. And it was very successful. A lot of people just chose to follow what happened, and they could see the live birth of 6 foxes in the ground, underground, and it was never shown before. And we were very much excited about these numbers of people wanting to experience nature. So we brought nature into people's homes, and they were really enjoying it, as you can see this person very late. But that was not the purpose of the Forest Council where we worked for. They wanted to bring people outside. So we came up with a solution for that, and we built an iPhone app that says, okay, I want to get outside, I want to get into nature, and I want to spend 15 minutes to get there. And it's very simple. It just gives you the access to the nature that is closer than you think. Of course, we don't have real nature here in this country. It's parks that act and look like nature, but it's not nature. And it's starting to change a little bit because nature is decided to come in again. We had a wolf, they think we had a wolf coming over the German border into this country, so nature will be living here maybe in the future. Okay, enough about nature, because we're talking about cities. About 5 years ago, a company asked us to think about creating a neighborhood in a social way, involving the future inhabitants of a neighborhood to give shape to their own neighborhood. And we used online platform to do that. You could pick out the space you needed with the family who would live there, and place it on a ground plan, and communicate. Later on, we plotted it on a Google Earth environment and communicate about what happened there. Discuss if the window in the kitchen was too big, you would see through somebody's bedroom or something. So we sorry?
Is that a feature or a bug?
That's a bug. So we've been busy a little bit with urban futures, and it was 5 years ago. Then it was rather new, but now on this event we hear a lot of things about creating your own environment, creating your own neighborhood, being a citizen that's more than following the government's rules. And we discussed it also in a session yesterday where Bonnie was, how online platforms could support your citizenship. And I think for this afternoon, for the half hour that we have, less than a half an hour, I would like to ask you to share your vision on this subject, Citizenship 2.0, the sort of what we discussed, the responsibility of both government and citizen to meet up, to communicate, and to create an environment that's better suited for everyone that lives in that neighborhood. Jake, can I ask you to comment on that first?
Sure. So I think there's actually 2 paradigm questions. There's what government is good at and what citizens are good at, and then there's what computers are good at and what humans are good at, right? So you have to address both of them simultaneously. Our platforms in general are these open participation platforms. They're either storytelling platforms in the case of 9/11 and StoryCorps, or they're what you might call civic activation platforms in the case of Change by Us. And the key to those platforms are that they're actually not completely open platforms, right? Change by Us isn't, well, citizens should be allowed to do whatever you want and here's a platform to organize around it. No, it's about the government or the sponsors of the platform saying, these are the initiatives that we think we all have in common, that we all share. Everyone can agree that we want to make a better quality of life. Everyone can agree that we want education to be more effective. Everyone can agree that we want the health of our citizens to improve. How can we, as the government, provide a platform that will inspire people to collaborate with each other and with not-for-profits and with resources from the city to activate and actualize projects to that end? So part of it is about, again, thinking about what different parties can bring to it, the government as well as the individual citizens. And then part of it is making it a space for participants, for citizens to bring their own energy. But part of it also is to recognize that a lot of the intelligence in the system is being provided by the people themselves and not by the software. Adam gave a great lecture critiquing the smart city, and I did a little bit of it in my talk as well. But essentially, the presumption that the city is a series of systems can get optimized. Yes, that's accurate, and yes, it would be better if trains were a little more efficient or a lot more efficient. But there's a whole human element that gets wrapped both outside of that problem and inside of that problem that really needs to be considered and tapped into. And so all the systems that we build in are either a sort of mixture of bottom up and top down, like they're constantly bouncing back and forth between the two, or they are at least sort of top down, but they have an immediate feedback loop into it. So you never have the type of unfortunate situations where you have top-down systems that are either getting data that they're misinterpreting, getting the wrong data, applying the data sets that have political intent as if they don't have political intent and they're completely neutral. I mean, these are sort of classic problems that existed, but in some ways were constrained by the limited nature of analog media in the past, right? You couldn't actually collect that much data, so you couldn't do that much harm. But now with the potential infinite resources in terms of data collection, there's actually, I think, a lot more opportunity for mischief and for ill intent when you actually start rolling these projects out.
Yeah. Thank you. Adam, maybe it's good. Yesterday we spoke about responsibility, the responsibility of the civilian or of the civilian living in the city, and it was in an example of bringing the waste outside, bringing your bag of waste outside, leaving it on the corner, and then it's the responsibility of the city council. It's not yours anymore. And when something happens to it, it's not your problem. It gets scratched open or it lies over the. How do you think that this freedom to act on your own as a citizen more than you? Because we talked about rules. Can I do that? Can I change the crossing, the traffic crossing, by putting a line on it? It was yesterday with one of the cases, and at one time the situation was a lot better than before, but in another situation it was a lot worse because nobody thought about the consequences with just one guy or one woman making that line on that crossing. You think people want to have more freedom to act on their own, or is it comfortable to just wait and see?
Well, the classic challenge in any question of governance is how you balance the needs of the community against the needs of the individual. All right, and that's the challenge that democracy has been working its way through for almost 3,000 years now. Where I come from, the United States right now, the discourse and a lot of the momentum is more towards the rights of the individual to do whatever the hell they damn well please, no matter how it affects everybody else. A particular kind of right libertarianism that bears a strong resonance with some of the things that Margaret Thatcher said in the UK 20 years ago. There is no such thing as society, all right? So my personal opinion is that, I'm an outlier in any human group. So obviously I'm going to be in favor of things which support the right of the individual to determine a great deal about their affairs and the choices they make and the balance between rights and responsibilities they enjoy. But I would argue that at least in the States right now, things have shifted so far in the direction of allowing the individual to give their voice without any thought towards how those individual actions in the aggregate determine the choices that the community has available to it, that we need to do something to move the pendulum back in the other direction. And so my answer is that when Jake talks about, what is technology good for, maybe one of the things that technology is good for is giving people a sense of investment in that larger community, reactivating their sense of ownership over it, and seeing that scaled up individual actions, things which seem appealing to the individual at the time they're doing it, wind up having larger scale or longer term consequences that wind up constraining the degree of freedom that's available to the community and individuals within that community. And so that's my hope for the technology, but it's not going to do that magically. It's going to require extraordinarily sensitive design. And somebody, frankly, who understands a little bit of something about the history of human attempts to generate large-scale order, and skill sets and mindsets which historically have not been available to the information technology community.
Yeah, Bonnie, yesterday we spoke about what happens in Boston. It was very inspiring, where the community and the city council were working closely together, and I was also inspired by the platform where you just post your. Maybe you can comment a little bit on that.
So just to kind of end out what we've been talking about here, what I see the great opportunity, this sort of idea of citizenship 2.0, and the way that technology platforms can engage in that is to create a space of opportunity and a safe space for experimentation. So I know what Change by Us does is create a safe place for people to submit ideas and to have a feedback loop and interaction with a bunch of different organizations and civic institutions. Certainly in a lot of the work we do, we create these safe places, whether they're events or online platforms that create opportunities for people to come together and make connections and perform that either in a physical situation or online. The examples that you're raising, SeeClickFix is the platform that Ben Berkowitz spoke about in our panel yesterday. And it does a very similar thing. It provides a space for individuals to take a stand in their community and start to take some ownership over issues that are happening, and that then has a feedback loop to either to a broader community and in many situations to their local services delivery departments. The role that Nigel plays, Nigel Jacob, who's the Chief Innovation Officer in Boston City Council in the Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics, the role, it's the best title ever. The role that he plays is kind of like very much like a connector, and so again he's creating this space of opportunity for citizens, for organizations, for the private sector to come and approach the local government, and then he acts as this connector that connects them with resources and opportunities to help catalyze innovation and exciting opportunities.
There's a broader issue with this, though, that I'm fascinated because there's a commonality in both SeeClickFix and potentially in things like Change by Us, in that you're creating the space of opportunity, you're creating a demand, and there's a risk that we're running of being potentially unable to connect that back to measures that are taken, steps that are made, investments that are made. So ultimately, what I'd like to see for something like SeeClickFix is the much larger, much longer term, much harder question of changing the incentive mechanics around the municipal administration. So for example, what SeeClickFix does is, let's say you see a pothole or a broken lamp or a leaking fire hydrant, you're able to notify the municipality of that, right? You're able to kind of date stamp it and say there's an issue that I've observed and you're going to report it to the municipal administration. There's a whole other aspect of that, though, which is closing the loop and addressing that and showing the citizen that their voice has been heard and acted upon. Sure. And I think the next generation of all of these systems is going to have to involve some attempt to not merely address those issues. And right now, SeeClickFix delivers a notification to the municipal administration, but there's no guarantee there that that's ever going to get acted upon. And there's nothing that in the incentive structure of the municipal administration that really requires that they act upon that. Wouldn't it be great if part of the criteria around, the sanitation department is that, there's some kind of performance bonus that goes along with addressing those citizen issues? And
right. Yeah. I was going to say, in parallel, I think another form of communication that would be really helpful is for citizens to understand what it costs to do these things. I mean, that's the big problem in America, is that there's no positive, constructive communication from the government about what it actually provides. And so you have this completely uninformed citizenship, or citizenry, that's only being informed about the negatives of government, which is echoed and reinforced by the press ad nauseum. And there's no way, so if you can imagine SeeClickFix, I click on it, it's like, oh, do you mind if your taxes go up this much to fix that? Or it says this proportion of your taxes would have to be spent on that, and that will be taken away from this thing. I mean, because that's the deal, is that SeeClickFix in some ways is a potential target for governments, not an asset, or it's a liability, because it's basically a customer service agency that's raising expectations from citizenry that a lot of governments can't provide.
Yeah, that's what we call an unfunded mandate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
we had two guys from the tax service yesterday in the session. You had a question?
No, he said we call it an unfunded mandate.
Unfunded mandate. There's an amazing piece of information visualization. you wouldn't even call that. You just call it communication in the U.S. So there's Social Security, which, if you've heard, was basically built in the Depression and has been a consistent target of the right wing in the U.S., even within this election cycle. And Social Security is sort of like a bank. People are putting money into it, and then they get it out in retirement. It doesn't really work like a bank because some people put in more money, and there's actually it's eventually going to be unfunded. One thing that a senator from New York State recognized 2 decades ago, or a decade ago, is that, I think it was 2 decades ago, that this was going to be a problem. That if people didn't see that it was like a bank account, they would eventually start to feel like it's a Ponzi scheme. So in America, once a year, you get this green letter. It says, this is how much you put in for every single year. This is what your benefits are going to be. Like, it's just that very simple form of communication. It's just enough to reinforce, oh, I put money in and then I get something out. And the problem is the other government agencies don't do that. So all you get is poor customer experience for government with no communication of the actual benefits that different citizens are gaining from it.
Yeah, to come. Yeah, of course. Wait a second. I will bring it to you.
Yesterday was a guy who presented an app that, if, in this example, not only outlining the costs of government,
Right.
but saying also, if you're going to fix this for us as a citizen, you're going to have a reduction on your tax.
Right.
I found that another way, a very more positive way to
Yeah.
turn things around. It's not only going to cost you. If you draw the line and you fix the lights bulb, you get $7 tax cut.
So it turns out that there's a happy overlap between some of... This is a theme that I come back to a lot, is that right now there's this sort of ascendancy of the neoliberal rhetoric of what we would call responsibilization on the part of the government. The government doesn't want to do the things that have previously been its role, right? So it wants to take these responsibilities and place them on the shoulders of the citizenry. There's a happy coincidence between some of the goals and ambitions of that and something that's a lot more congenial to me personally, which is this more left libertarian, autonomous community self-regulation and self-management idea. I think that there's an enormous amount of common ground between these approaches. If we can develop, and it has to be more than an app, it has to be an ethos, and it has to be an ethos that's broadly communicated and broadly agreed to. But if we can empower citizens to take control over the things that are in their own communities, if we can, yes, to some degree get regulation out of their way, but also critically give them the support that they require, then I think that, there's some kind of commonality and a potential platform for an entirely new governance model.
Right. I mean, I think the key is, just to round it all the way back, is figure out what government's good at and figure out what citizens are capable of. I don't think anyone actually wants you going out and getting an asphalt smelter and trying to fix your streets. Like, that would not be a good scenario. So, but it is really important to communicate the things that you can do. And I think, again, Change by Us is not an open platform to do whatever you want. It's not an anarchist toolkit. It is a space for government to identify within its own position of power and responsibility. These are the things we can all agree on, right? It's not good to launch a Change by Us campaign on something that is questionable, right? But it isn't questionable to say, look, we want to make our kids healthy. How can we do that? You come up with the ideas, and then we'll give you resources to help execute those ideas.
Okay, I hope this. I think we're in the harbor again, and went very, 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 very fast. So you wanted to comment because
I just wanted to finish
a last
with
comment. Yeah.
Final point, and this comes back to my earlier point around creating spaces for opportunity and understanding the context of the situation. So providing people with a safe space to play and experiment, and then having the resources and ownership, responsibility connected to deploying whatever comes out of that.
Great.
Nice summary.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys, for this discussion. We could go on for a lot more time. I think we want to be better citizens, all of us. If it is gonna take us a little less tax to pay. So, thank you. Give him a warm hand, please. Huh?